On last week's Broken Silicon, me and Max from High Yield had a long conversation that eventually got to talking about what sort of Zen 5 configuration would excite us most, and therefore be the biggest problem for Intel's Arrow Lake launching next year. As for what my guest Max opined for, well, he just wanted some sort of R9 8965WX, a dual Zen 5C chiplet product that had a total of 32 cores on AM5, which, yeah, that would be cool for users that want a hyper-efficient 32 core on a platform that isn't nearly as expensive as Threadripper's. But that's not what I specifically wanted. I wanted AMD to combine a Zen 5 X3D chiplet with a Zen 5C chiplet for one above 5 GHz gaming product that could leverage Vcache in said games, but also went up to 24 cores total for incredible multi-threading performance. And actually, I think it's important to point out why this configuration will be a far bigger monster that is easier to schedule for than what we have right now with the R9 7950 X3D. You see, right now, AMD isn't using any of these dense C cores in any of the CCDs on this product. They are using an X3D one and then a bog standard Zen 4 non-C CCD that frequently sees some of the cores boost far higher than what the X3D CCD cores can boost too. And this is a huge problem for scheduling because right now, all Windows really does with AMD CPUs is constantly dynamically pick the highest boosting core for the most important thread that Windows decides is the most important thread. And that means that products like the 7950 X3D sometimes have an important thread, like one that's maybe running a game, that would actually maybe prefer one of the Vcache cores, but because it's being clocked lower, it incorrectly chooses one of the standard cores, and then gets thrown on the wrong CCD, and performance suffers massively. And conversely, some apps and even some games might actually prefer to just use the fastest clocking cores, and so they'll throw a thread to a slower Vcache core that's on a different CCD, and again, there's massive latency penalties, and that can really affect performance. But AMD has expressly stated that they still think this was the right move with the 7950 X3D, that it was worth it so you could have a higher boosting CCD for higher multi-threading performance, and they believe using the Xbox Game Bar in Windows was a good enough band-aid. But what if you didn't need a band-aid? What if the CCD that had Vcache was also the fastest clocking CCD, and you weren't losing multi-threading performance because the other CCD that was clocking lower actually had twice as many cores? Wouldn't this solve the entire dilemma without needing an Xbox Game Bar? Theoretically, I think it would, and that is why I personally want AMD to launch an R9 8960 X3D next year as part of the Zen 5 lineup. But can they? Well, that's what I set out to answer after I noticed something very encouraging shown during one of AMD's Zen 4 EPYC Hot Chips presentations yesterday that seemed to confirm something very important for the prospects of launching a potential 8960 X3D, after once again quoting something that we've all heard AMD say a million times by now, namely that the cores of Zen 4C are 35% smaller than Zen 4, they seem to finally also confirm that the overall CCD, though, was almost the same size between the C and non-C variants. Now, this is important because this is, well, it's not that it's unexpected. And in fact, this channel is the one that exclusively leaked Bergamo with Zen 4C 2 years ago. And I was always told by my AMD sources that the Zen 4C CCDs are roughly the same size as Zen 4 CCDs. But roughly can mean a few different things. Some of my sources thought that the Zen 4C CCD with 16 cores instead of 8 cores might only be 5% bigger. Other people thought that it could be up to 30% bigger. And it really does matter. If it's closer to 5%, then there's a chance that this thing fits on an AM5 package just as easily as the non-C CCDs. But if it was 30% bigger, there's no chance you're fitting this on AM5. And well, there had been websites like SemiAnalysis that claimed that Zen 4C chiplets were only around 9.7% larger than Zen 4 chiplets, which is about the size difference I'd want to see to fit these things on AM5. That's not a statement from AMD. And when I looked at this presentation on Hot Chips, man, it seemed to be right about the difference SemiAnalysis claimed. You know, dies are not always lined up for exact size comparisons in these presentations, but I just don't think it's a coincidence that they seem to be the exact size difference that SemiAnalysis claimed. And while we had already had pictures of Bergamo online that show the size of CCDs, and well, I'll just be honest, I probably should have just done this a while ago. But now I'm doing it today after seeing this at Hot Chips. If I line up Bergamo and Genoa, yeah, their chiplets don't look that different from each other in size. And in fact, if I draw some little lines here, yeah, it seems like these chiplets are the same height. Though the Bergamo chiplets are, of course, a little fatter. But that's okay, because if we look at the Zen 4 AM5 package, it's the height. The height that seems more important to be the same. If it bulged a little bit down, it looks like it would be fine. And so, guys, at a minimum, I now think I can just confirm you can at least physically fit a Zen 4C chiplet in the same slot you can put a Zen 4 chiplet. However, if we are being honest, that's only half the battle. Just because you can physically fit something in a space does not mean it's supported. After all, as an example, recently this channel exclusively leaked that there is a Navi 3132 hybrid SoC that fits the full Navi 31 GCD and even all 6 MCDs into a smaller package that can fit on like a 7800 XT board should AMD want to launch some special products like, well, for example, the 7900 GRE. However, just because you can fit the Navi 31 configuration in a smaller space on a Navi 32 board does not mean those MCDs work. They don't. They are unsupported in that package. And so just because you can fit a Zen 4C CCD physically on an AM5 package does not mean it will necessarily work. And so, after confirming that this thing should be able to fit physically, I set out to gather data on if, well, the Zen 4 IO die can support Zen 4C, and I want to talk about that and also leak some new exclusive Zen 5 details and Phoenix desktop APU release date information. But first, an ad from a sponsor. Ever get exhausted looking for a safe way to pay reasonable pricing for Microsoft software amongst tons of questionable listings on eBay and shady websites? Well, now you don't have to do this any longer, not if you go to CDKeyOffer.com. This piece of content is brought to you by CDKeyOffer.com and their back to school sale. Whether it's Microsoft operating systems, Office products, or even many of the latest AAA games, CDKeyOffer.com provides PC gamers with a product that I honestly think this community does need in a world where far too many of our components that make up our PCs are getting more expensive every year. The last thing we need is monopolistically priced software to remain on that list of stupid stuff we pay too much for. And you know, the Moore's Law is Dead team has been working with CDKeyOffer.com for many years for a reason. They've been good to me. They've been good to Dan. They've been good to family members that use their website when they build a PC. And they've been good to the Moore's Law is Dead community as well. So whether you're looking for Steam, EA, Uplay, or PlayStation keys, or of course Microsoft products, support Moore's Law is Dead by using the code brokensilicon for 25% off all Microsoft products, or dieshrink for 3% off everything else. Support us at CDKeyOffer.com today. Okay, so we've covered that at least superficially, it seems like you can fit a Zen 4C chiplet on an AM5 package right now, just like you can a Zen 4 or Zen 4 X3D chiplet. But is that even supported by the IO die? Because it's not that simple. You can't just always glue whatever you want together and expect them to work together without explicitly designing these dies to work together in the first place. It's not as easy as gluing things together. This is something that Intel still seems to be learning the hard way. But yeah, for AM5 to support dense chiplets, they would need to have designed them to do so. And well, in the aforementioned Zen 4 Epic presentation, at Hot Chips, representatives from AMD stated,
"This is talking about a flexibility option that that applies to all 4 of the families. So this picture here is kind of a zoom in of the I/O die and the Infinity Fabric, but we can just concentrate on those dark green boxes at the top and bottom. Those are the core chiplets, or we call them CCDs sometimes. Those little green arrows, sorry you can barely see them, but those are the GMI links. Those are our high speed, high bandwidth interfaces between the core chiplet and the I/O die. So the 2 configurations at top is something we've been doing for multiple generations, where we have 1 GMI link per core chiplet. And this is what's been enabling the large core count improvements over time, yet at a great power efficiency. What's new is on the bottom. So these 2 configurations are GMI3 wide. So now we can take 2 GMI links for a single core chiplet. So whether it's a Zen 4 or a Zen 4C chiplet. So 2 GMI links means twice as much bandwidth into the Infinity Fabric. And what this enables is for a smaller number of core chiplets to max out the DRAM bandwidth in the system. And this gives us more configuration options to fine tune our products for perf per watt, perf per core, and or form factor.
Now, my understanding is that while Ryzen I/O dies currently used in Zen 4 gaming chips have GMI3, they do not have the same ability to quite as widely provide extra bandwidth to some cores over others in the same way Epic's I/O die currently can. But it doesn't really need to, actually, in my opinion. It's only ever going to have 2 memory channels and 2 chiplets anyways, and after I spoke with some of my contacts at AMD and people who work on chip design, the important takeaway is they all seem to confirm that while Epic's I/O dies are probably a bit more flexible in how they can provide bandwidth to different types of chiplets, the Ryzen I/O die currently in use by Zen 4 still is an inherently flexible design meant to support different types of CCDs, and this was actually even backed up later in that same presentation too.
I think you're asking about the latency to talk. So that is part of the architecture. Again, like I said, the logical abstractions are still the same, and so their interfaces still remain the same.
And actually, once I had these little snippets, quotes, and things from this Hot Chips presentation, I shot it all out to a handful of AMD contacts of mine, and well, a few of them remained very guarded about what they would be willing to confirm. A couple of them finally just came out and admitted it. They stated, yep, look, we'll admit it. They're basically saying it now at Hot Chips. The Zen 4 Ryzen I/O die currently in their gaming lineup can support either Zen 4 or Zen 4C or Zen 4 X3D chiplets at will. It's just up to if AMD ever wants to launch those products. And both contacts, at least right now, don't have evidence this is happening with Zen 4. And to be fair, I actually can make a pretty compelling argument that it didn't even make sense for AMD to bother launching some hybrid design with Zen 4 until, well, really until Zen 5's ready anyways. You see, when Zen 4 launched in late last year, well, Bergamo was still far away from being ready, so I don't even think they could have launched an 8+16 or 32-core Zen 4C variant last year. They probably couldn't until, well, this summer. But on this summer, Bergamo is going to need all of those chiplets to itself to fulfill Epic contracts. So financially, it just doesn't make any real sense to do that. And on top of all of this, well, when Zen 4 launched, it had problems supporting DDR5 above 6,000 speeds, and that probably would have held back the performance of any 32 or probably even any 24-core Zen 4 plus Zen 4C model they could have launched. And oh, but would you look at that? All of a sudden, probably less than half a year before Zen 5 launches to desktop, AMD's gotten DDR5 8000 support working, and I just don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think they had Zen 4C chiplets ready for the initial launch, so it didn't come out last year, and then when they were ready, it was much more important to use them for Bergamo, and that's when they got to work even supporting enough bandwidth for it to make sense to launch this type of product anyways, and now they have it. And in fact, if you look at testing from Buildzoid, it seems like the support is there and it totally works, but it doesn't really benefit Zen 4 at all. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think we're seeing these new updates to support faster DDR5 because these are early side effects of AMD preparing to launch Zen 5 by early next year, possibly with higher core counts than what we have now. And I will say this. Well, I do think Zen 5 may up core counts, maybe by implementing dense C chiplets on the AM5 platform. I don't actually think the overall packages are going to look that different from what Zen 4 looks like. It is my opinion, therefore, that if you're not really getting anything that looks different. It's just that the architecture itself has been fundamentally redesigned, like Zen 2 to Zen 3 and Zen 3 to Zen 4, not like Zen 1 to Zen 2. Then if Zen 4 can support mixing various dense and non-dense chiplets on AM5, I would be almost 100% sure that Zen 5 can as well. And yeah, I actually back this up with some schematics I just received today from one of my best AMD sources. And well, I unfortunately do think it is way too dangerous to show the architectural diagrams for Zen 5 next to Zen 4 on screen here. It could definitely hurt one of my sources. What I will tell you all today is that it basically just backs up everything I've said in Zen 5 leak after Zen 5 leak after Zen 5 leak after Zen 5 leak. All of those leaks together that have come out this year, not much is really changing, but I did in documentation see proving of some things I've been talking about. So I thought I'd put a card on screen right now just to tell you what I can extra confirm today. Now, the first thing I can confirm, which was already leaked in recent content out of this channel, is that DDR5 5600 or higher is clearly listed for Zen 5 Turin. This is 16.7% faster than Genoa, and we just saw that Zen 4 can already support up to DDR5 8000 after recent updates. So I have no problem stating that it is my opinion, after seeing this documented again, that Zen 5 will support at least DDR5 7200 at its base for desktop, or at a minimum, it'll be supportable. I don't know if that'll be the default clock, but you'll be able to do it fairly easily, and it would not surprise me if like 8000, 8400, even DDR5 9000 was supported by Zen 5 on desktop as well. Additionally, I have now further proof that Turin's I/O die supports up to 16 CCDs. Turin standard, I can now say it. I've seen a diagram showing how the I/O die is organized. Turin standard 100% has 16 8-core CCDs for a total of 128 Zen 5 cores. But there is something interesting I noticed on one of the I/O die diagrams. An omission that they cannot use at least 16 Zen 5C chiplets, which, if they could, would go up to 256 cores. This is worth stating because the sister documentation I have for Zen 4 EPYC explicitly states that Bergamo cannot use more than 8 CCDs with the Zen 4 EPYC I/O die. The Zen 5 documentation does not say this. And so I'm just always, whether they ever confirm it or not, people, going to have a suspicion that if AMD unveils a 192 Zen 5C product, that they could, if they really wanted to, have launched a 256 core variant. And I'd also heard years ago that was the goal. My suspicion, if AMD does not launch a 256 core Turin, is that it's going to be because of bandwidth limitations, like they just don't have enough memory channels and speed for it to be worth it. Maybe they're still testing that. Maybe they're still seeing, can we get higher than 56 as the default speed on EPYC? If we can, maybe we should go up to 256 cores. That if they don't, though, it's because of that, bandwidth limitations, power consumption limitations, or thermal issues. But it does make me wonder. It does make me wonder seeing this diagram. Again, next to a Zen 4 diagram that clearly states that Bergamo is limited in how many CCDs it can have. I do not see that on the Zen 5 diagram. I'm going to keep wondering whether they announce it or not when Turin is unveiled, if AMD is hiding a 256 core monster, just like I believe they are hiding an R9 8960 X3D monster for desktop. And I guess the other thing I will leak from the documentation I've seen recently is that at least the EPYC, it's not Ryzen, but the EPYC I/O die seems to have some upgrades to the FCLK and even more flexibility in supporting different chiplet types just in general. Combined with what my sources are telling me about Ryzen 8000 products, I really do believe that they are going to be every bit as flexible as Ryzen 7000, which I've already stated earlier in this video, I think can support Zen 4C chiplets on AM5. And if there is a new I/O die, I think they could do wild things on AM5. Although to be fair, I actually don't have any proof that there is a new I/O die for Zen 5 on AM5. Now, for a while, or really should I say a while ago, I heard that there was a consideration to have a new slightly improved I/O die for Zen 5, and I still think there could be, like maybe RDNA 3.5, a small AI engine, I don't know, but I still don't have proof that AMD is using a new I/O die. Now, first of all, I don't think that really matters. I believe that the I/O die that's being used right now with Zen 4 will be more than enough to support enough bandwidth after recent updates with the AJSA to support a 24-core monster called the 8960X3D. So I don't think it should really be consequential whether they use a new I/O die or not. I don't think that will be important for the core performance. If anything, it'll just be a few new features. But I still have to say this too. I don't have proof either way. And so don't take this as me saying one way or another if there's a new I/O die. And in fact, there was a recent leak out there covered by a few websites that I think misinterpreted potentially what AMD was talking about in a recent webinar. And the reason I think there was some misinterpretations is because I don't think a lot of these journalists even bothered to watch the webinar they were quoting for their articles, which is unfortunately very commonplace in this industry. And, well, I did take at least 10 minutes to watch it, as I would think anyone who has self-respect or integrity would do. And if you watch it, the person at AMD actually says this.
And best of all, it's entry, right? So you're going to have multiple different generations of CPUs that are going to drop into this infrastructure. Phoenix will be the next generation. After that, we'll have Granite Rapids leveraging the Zen 5 core.
Call me crazy, but I think one could interpret what she said to mean that AMD has Zen 4 coming out now to AM5 server products, and then after that there will be a server variant based on Phoenix, and then after that a server variant on AM5 based on Zen 5, and then possibly that RDNA or Navi 3.5 thing that was shown there, that might just be referencing Strix, just like it kind of seems like they could be referencing Phoenix right now. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if you watch the video, that's kind of what that sounds like to me. I'd give it a 50-50 chance of what they confirmed. And in fact, I also noticed that she said Granite Rapids, which is an Intel product, not Granite Ridge. And so there's an error right there. For all we know, this was just a mistake on the slide in general. And well, the only thing I can confirm, though, is that I lined up the current link with the presentation with her face, and that slide's been changed. So clearly AMD thinks they either screwed up by leaking something they didn't want to leak, or they screwed up because there was a typo. In fact, the only thing that I feel comfortable concluding as a leak from this webinar is that it seems like AMD just double confirmed that Phoenix is coming to desktop between Zen 4 and Zen 5 product launches, which, to be fair, I already leaked in a Zen 5 leak anyways. And you know, just in general, when AMD has some roadmap that says something, you always got to be a little careful about what you can draw from that roadmap as 100% confirmation. I think roadmaps are best to be thought of as what they're possibly planning to do and can do, not what they will do and not what they can do at the maximum. It just shows this is something they can do. They may have other stuff that's better. Like, I've leaked a roadmap that shows up to 16 cores of Granite Ridge professional server products. Just because that roadmap says up to 16 cores doesn't mean it's not just because AMD doesn't want people to catch wind that they could launch up to 32 cores on AM5, nor that they may just not be sure they want to waste any of those chiplets on that when they could be selling them in EPYC products instead. And well, then all we can really say at the end of this video is really two things. It's up to AMD if they launch this monster, but this monster, the 8960X3D, whether the roadmap show it or not, I'm confident saying it is possible for them to launch this. And that, well, that 8 big core, 32 little core Arrow Lake product I leaked does sound devastating, even if it's missing hyperthreading. You gotta remember that that 40 core, 40 thread configuration won't be ready for Zen 5 when that comes out. Zen 5, based on the roadmaps I have seen, could be launching a full year before the 40-core Arrow Lake configuration. And with Zen 5, unlike with Zen 4, it seems that this dense C cores already at the same time. So before Intel even launches an 8 plus 16 Arrow Lake, there's a chance AMD may already have 8 plus 16, so think about that, 48 thread products on the market before Intel even has their 24 thread products on the market. And well, I have leaked that Arrow Lake should bring at least 30 to 40% higher single threading, and that 40 core variant, when it eventually comes out, should bring 40 to 60% higher multi-threading. I don't know. I've leaked Cinebench scores. Guys, at a minimum, Zen 5 is going to have probably 25% higher single threading, and I think it could get as high as 35%. That's not IPC, that's single threading total, and that's with them having a core count advantage on top of it, and that's before we even talk about the V-Cache models that could launch before the 40-core Arrow Lake is even out. And I just find it hard to believe that even if Arrow Lake looks impressive, it will be able to decisively defeat, at best I think it would trade blows with this lineup I'm showing on screen, where AMD can launch 24 cores and lower at the beginning of next year if they want to, and then when Arrow Lake comes out, they can launch the V-Cache models. So look, I'll say it one more time. I cannot promise you that AMD is going to think it's financially worth it to launch some V-Cache Zen 5C combo 24-core monster next year. But what I am sure of, and I hope you're now sure of after watching this video, is that whether they launch this product or not, somewhere out there, somewhere in AMD's labs, there is a monster waiting for Intel. And that is going to just about do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure you like it, that you ring the bell button, that you support the sponsor if you need any of their products, and that you consider joining the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon. You'll get early ad-free access to Broken Silicon, which I do want to say, nope, it did not come out today. I was working super hard on this video. There's also been live coverage of Hot Chips for the past few days in the Moore's Law is Dead Discord, eating up my time and my contributors' time. And also Dan is about to finish up defending his thesis and drive to Nashville. And, well, that's important. And we were willing to both delay the episode for Hot Chips coverage and delay the episode for Dan's schedule. So, yep, that Broken Silicon should be coming out either tomorrow or maybe Thursday. But it's coming out a bit late for a few reasons. But if you want a Moore's Law Z podcast, patrons get dieshrink. It's an exclusive podcast, and one came out a few days ago, so that's there. If you support us for just $2 a month, you'll get that, other exclusive ad-free content every month, and the ability to ask guest questions, talk with me and other people on the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon with thousands of people that I'm sure would love to speak with you. But no matter what, you made it this far, so thank you for watching.